You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, special guest Josh Spiegel joins us to talk about, so many Amityville movies. Amityville Horror, Amityville Possession, Amityville 3D, Amityville Death House, Amityville Exorcism, Amityville Playhouse, Amityville A New Generation, Amityville in Space, Amityville Vanishing Point, Amityville Karen, Amityville Outhouse. Yes, that's right, Amityville Outhouse, and so many more. Here we go.
Kind of mind-boggling to me as someone that grew up on Long Island and would take my college friends to the Amityville house around Halloween time to know that there were actually 40-some-odd movies.
It's up to around 50. 50 wow, at this particular point. It was at 43, I think, when I made my video last year.
2021 and 2022, where it seems like it was a banner year with 12 Amityville-related movies.
Well, and I don't know. I'm sure I will get to talk about this on the show, but I'm now contributing.
You're adding to that.
Yes, yes. You're hoping to put everyone out of their misery by ending the entire franchise.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So
I have a feeling it will not be the last Amityville film movie.
No, it certainly will not.
All right, let's get into it. For folks that are listening, they're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Bertie Gonzalez. With me today, Pete Charbonneau, co-host extraordinaire, and we have a fun guest on today, Josh Spiegel. Josh is the author of Timelines of Terror, The Fractured Continuities of Horror Film Sequels, published by McFarlane. The book examines horror films, the sequels, the glue that holds these individual films together, continuity, canon, in franchises like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, Leprechaun, Scream. Josh, you have movie timelines on YouTube, over 52,000 subscribers, deep dive into movie franchises, especially franchises that have multiple movie series, spin-offs, canons, and you get into it. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. You devote videos to ranking movies, so like Carpenter movies, Stephen King adaptations, Christmas horror movies. You do videos on unanswered questions, so sticking in that Carpenter vein on Escape from New York, the Romero zombie films, Gremlins, Predator, the Alien series, the first book. So that's Timelines of Terror, Fractured Continuities of Horror Film Series that you already published with McFarlane. And all right, guys, get ready for the transition here. The other book that you'd mentioned that you want to start working on, you can start seeing this, is potentially working on a book that collects the Amityville series. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually in progress of being written right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a professional transition. Just want to say thank you.
Excellent. Top notch. I'm fascinated by the Amityville movies. And recently I reached out to and was able to have discussions with approximately 60% of the various directors from various Amityville movies, discuss with them the process, like why it was an Amityville movie, when the decision to make an Amityville movie came, and how interested they were in making it a part of the series, and then some behind the scenes stories of just them shooting it. And I was able to talk to a large number of them. Some I just wasn't able to get in touch with. They just didn't respond. But the most of them that wanted to talk were super friendly and very eager to talk about their movies. And it was cool. So the book will be sort of a breakdown of each of the Amityville movies, discussion of the movie, and a little bit of the interview, and just kind of the history of Amityville in a way.
Mm-hmm. I love how this is like a good Venn diagram of your movie timeline, also your passion just for movies in general. But then, now that you've already published something, why not go into like the magic show that is these Amityville movies? Because the thing about these, and spoiler alert, some of these movies are not great, and they very much just slap the Amityville name on there. But I think the part that's interesting about it is that a lot of these indie filmmakers that you've spoken to, like, I have to imagine they make the decision to add Amityville to their project when they're already making an indie film. And folks should check out Josh's video. It's 2 hours long. And this is not 2 hours long. Like, no, it's amazing. You did a great job, Josh, of documenting those movies. Your work's not done, but those filmmakers make the decision to add Amityville to their movie. And like you mentioned, in some of those movies, they were not Amityville linked, connected at all whatsoever. But for marketing distribution purposes, they made a conscious choice.
Well, and yeah, and honestly, it's funny because I'm going to go back to you saying that a lot of these movies are not that great. And yeah, that's a very true statement. But I'll be honest with you. If I'm given the choice of watching, like, I don't know, Amityville Outhouse or Transformers 7, I'm going to watch Amityville Outhouse any day of the week because, yeah, that movie may not be good. But I know that every single one of those directors are making that movie on like a shoestring budget with all of their heart, compiling whatever resources they have at hand to just make a movie. And I adore backyard movies. I adore them. And just the whole spirit of people just doing whatever it takes to make a movie, as opposed to we're going to spend $250 million on this big garish special effects nightmare of a movie. I would so much rather watch a movie that costs like $500 using some guy and his like friends any day of the week. And a lot of the Amityville movies fall under that category of just like some dude and his friends making a movie in their sister's like laundromat or something like that. And they just, yeah, I mean, the movie itself may not be good, but a lot of the time you just feel that passion of just like, we're making a movie, that excitement.
That's the term that you taught me, Pete, earnest awfulness, which I love how you've always used that to describe that sentiment.
Yeah, so I mean, if you go on Tubi right now and you just type in Amityville, like you're going to get a smorgasbord of some of these titles too.
This evening at the infamous Amityville house, something is about to go down.
This house is evil incarnate. Its evil has spread like a plague. To stop it, we must strike at its roots. If I were you, I'd leave now.
That's the largest black hole I've ever seen.
We've never come across anything like this in space before. I think there's something more sinister at play here.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
It's already beginning again. The war between good and evil continues.
We need to nuke that black hole.
That house must be destroyed.
Amityville in space.
Yeah, I hear you, Josh. I really have taken a shine to films that by most standards would not be considered good, but there's something about just the creative effort, like you said, like people just want to put something out there. That earnestness of, we're making a movie. You go back to anything from like American movie, Mark Borchardt, like just there's elements of pathos to it, because like you're like, if this person was a little more self-aware, they probably would not have gotten as far as they have. And I don't know if there's, in the conversations that you've had with some of the people making these Amityville movies, if there's anything like that, but there's just a determination there to put this stuff out in the world. And we may make fun of some of these things and say like, this movie is horrible, this movie's bad or whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think there's an appreciation on our end that these things are actually in the world and in existence. And the fact that there are so many Amityville movies that are out there is, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's wild to me. Was there one or a couple in particular that got you on this Amityville kick? Was there? How did your, I don't want to call it obsession, but how did your interest in this franchise come about?
I'm just more fascinated in the whole phenomena, because it is when I try to explain it to people, and like I say, look, there's all these movies with Amityville, and I've had people ask me, because how does this work? And I just say to them, like, look, Amityville's the name of a town, right? It's a town. So, like, I'm from Pittsburgh originally. And so if you had a movie called, like, The Pittsburgh Monster, and then I made a movie called, like, I don't know, like Living in Pittsburgh, it's like you can't copyright the word Pittsburgh, it's like how you had a movie called Jason Takes Manhattan. But if you made that movie's not connected to Woody Allen's Manhattan, it's like they're not, right. It's not the same thing because the name is just the name of the town. And so you can't copyright Amityville. You can copyright distinct aspects of the movie, like the Amityville house and like having the Lutzes, like you're not allowed to use the Lutzes in a movie. But the aspect of it being a town name means that anyone can use the word Amityville in their movie. And I find that fascinating because there's nothing else like that in the film world, period. There's no other franchise with quotes that is so unconnected because it's just people taking advantage of something. The only thing that I can think of is like all those bizarre like Christmas movies that like all those Hallmark Lifetime Christmas movies. It's just like, we just make all these Christmas movies and they're unconnected, but they're just all based around Christmas.
Wally just won a trip to sunny Amityville. There, he meets another unexpected guest. They're complete opposites. But the spirit of Christmas will bring them together. Steve Rosinski stars in Amityville Christmas Vacation.
And this is the same sort of concept. It's like where we're just making all these movies just literally based around a word.
I was going to say, there's something very like Snakes on a Plane about this, where the title communicates what it is as well, because I think the other part of it is the Amityville is like that shorthand for a viewer that lets you know it's a horror film, because whatever it's going to be, right? And like some of them, I had to write them down here: Amityville Dawn, Amityville Curse, Dollhouse, Evil Escapes, Final Chapter, which is not the final chapter, Asylum, Prison, Island, Playhouse, Death House, Awakening, Vanishing Point, A New Generation, and three of my favorites: It's About Time. That's right, Amityville, It's About Time. Amityville in the Hood, because I mean, obviously, if it was good enough for Leprechaun, why not? And Amityville Vibrator. Thank you, Josh. It's a good 2 or 3 minute segment on your 2-hour video. But I think that's the other part is it's a shorthand these filmmakers are making to quickly tell the potential audience, if you like horror films, you may like this. So yeah, I give them credit for making that decision as well, as much as you pointed out in some cases where they're making a movie about a werewolf or a vampire and the connection is very loose, but nevertheless, maybe they just call it Amityville Coven. And there's just something about that title that speaks a lot more than maybe if you just called it Coven.
Yes, it is. It is also, I feel like, sort of a signal that nowadays that you're not only getting a horror movie, but you're also getting a low budget horror movie. It's almost like a shorthand of that as well, too.
But you're saying it is like a badge of honor?
Yeah, and you know what? And I also feel as if because it's been around long enough, I do feel as if we've gotten to the point where you're not only seeing that happen, but you're seeing the ante being upped. Because I feel like people are just like, okay, well, now there's so many movies that have Amityville on it. So how do we take it to that next level? So that's how you get like Dustin's Amityville in the Hood. That's wild. How do you then you get Polonia's Amityville in Space, which is like what? And now you've got Amityville out. You do have Amityville Death Toilet. So all these, which is a crossover with the Death Toilet franchise. So
I didn't realize that was a franchise. That's great.
Well, I think this is in Josh's video, Pete. He mentions a few things, and I made a note of some of these, Josh, and I want you to add to some of this if there's anything that I missed, right? So Amity movies seem to have a few reoccurring themes. I did cherry pick some of the best ones, I think. A 10 or 12-year-old kid that sometimes look like they're actually 30 or 32-year-old. That seems to pop up at least twice. A new family moving into a home. That's got to be a part of the template. Flies, demons, sometimes vampires, werewolves, or scarecrows, incest, chopping wood, little ghosts, boys, girls, little girls, or boy ghosts, right? A father ghost, the use of the DeFeo name or the lack of the use of the name, and you use something else to kind of, as be a substitute. The dollhouse, Dick Miller at least once, right? A painting of a clown, possessed items like a lamp, a mirror, a dollhouse again, or a clock, cursed lumber. So that could make sense why you have Amityville outhouse, because if you make an outhouse from the lumber of the Amityville home, then there you go. That's how things get really shitty. Booty shaking music. Ryan Reynolds abs. That's at least in one. Like you mentioned, at least one Polonia brother, demon transference to like an animal or like a cat or a bear, and then at least one meth making alien. Is that fair?
That is pretty fair, yes. And again, a lot of those things tend to focus more on the early aspects of it, because again, I feel like the later it gets into the franchise and like it's when it starts to get into the okay, we're just slapping the title on.
That's your doubling down, right?
Yeah. It's those are the ones that you won't find any of those recurring things, but absolutely one of the recurring themes is the cursed items, which played very heavily into not only the early like legitimate sequels, but then a lot of the low budget guys took that and ran with it. Like definitely Polonia ran with that. He is the guy that used the lumber, the haunted lumber. Dustin Ferguson used that with the clown painting, and he had the little monkey doll and everything like that. So definitely there were some filmmakers that were like, okay, we are going to use these aspects from the movie to kind of put it in there. But then you do have other ones. Amityville Cop, for example, was not called Amityville. It was filmed under a completely different title. It has zero references to Amityville. The movie takes place in Los Angeles. The word Amityville is never said in the movie. There's no connections. And it was one, I know that from the writer, that the distributor just took the movie, which is like, okay, this is great. We're going to call it Amityville Cop and put it out. And that was it. There was never any intention for it to be an Amityville movie. So none of those aspects did they get to put into the movie because it was never meant to be that anyway. Sometimes that is definitely an indicator of they knew ahead of time that it was going to be an Amityville movie. Because if you had a mention of the DeFeos in there, or if somebody says get out or something like that at some point, you know that they knew going in. But if you get none of that, more often than not, it was something that was tagged on afterwards.
I think the biggest thing I learned is maybe don't play drinking games while you're watching these movies, because that would not be a good thing.
You will die.
Yes.
So I did. I watched your shorter version of the Amityville timeline, and when you kept bringing out a different bottle of alcohol for each one as it went on, I was like, "Man, Josh's liver is going to be hurting at some point."
That's right.
Well, I'm about to spoil some of that movie magic. I'm about to spoil a little bit of movie magic for you.
Are you going to tell me there wasn't liquor in there?
I don't drink.
Oh,
exclusive.
Unbelievable.
Fan2Fan podcast.
It's all fake.
Unbelievable.
Movie props.
Yeah. So well, it's funny because I don't drink and I don't smoke or anything like that, but which is hilarious because I did it.
Your vices are just Amityville movies.
Pretty much, yeah, bad movies and cola. But no, I did a timeline on the Cheech and Chong movies, and my wife co-starred with me, and I don't smoke. And in the video, I'm like smoking a fake joint, and she walks in and she's making fun of me. And I had somebody in my comments that was so mad and was arguing with me. It's just like calling me a pothead, and I'm just like, dude, I don't smoke. And he's just like, you're smoking in the video, and I'm like, that's. But anyway, so yeah.
You have caring fans, Josh. That's the whole point of this, right? People who care about your livelihood, your health. They're just looking out for you. Want to make sure you're okay. Obviously, you don't care about our health because you're adding to the Amityville list on IMDb on your own by you had a successful crowdsourcing campaign and you're working on the Last Amityville Movie. It's your installment.
You're making the Last Amityville Movie.
You got to tell us about it, but I mean, I guess I got to ask the first question is, how dare you?
Well, it's funny because I'm talking to all these directors and we're all talking about making these movies. And the more I'm talking about it, and these guys are telling me how they came about it and like how much money they did and everything. And they just went out and they shot it. It just dawned on me. It was just said, just do your own, man. Just do one. Let's just do it. It'd be fun. And you know that the audience will eat it up and they'll get a kick out of it. And, it could broaden the audience. And get those Amityville people to watch it. So the people that don't know me from the channel will want to see an Amityville movie, and the people from the channel will want to see me make a movie. And I just thought it'd be kind of fun. And I said, well, how can I do this and do it so that it'd be, meta and self-referential, but also be kind of fun. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting to do the last Amityville movie and sort of do something that will wrap things up. But also, I could tell you this, that without spoiling elements of the movie does legitimize all of the other movies called Amityville. I found a way to tie all of the movies together so that every single movie called Amityville does actually factor into my storyline. And also, I know that my movie won't be called The Last Amityville. I mean, I know my movie won't be the last movie called Amityville something, but there is a plot point of my movie that makes sure that my movie is the last Amityville movie. Anything after that will be fake.
I'm going to read the description, Josh, if you don't mind. And then by all means, I want to talk about this a little bit more because that's an interesting journey. You went from the YouTube video to talking about these movies to making them. And I love the motivation there. All right. During the midst of a massive pandemic and lockdown, a horror YouTube guy, I think we know who that guy is, finds himself trapped in the very thing that he spends his time tearing down, a bad horror film. Alone and isolated, a mysterious package from somewhere in Long Island. I think Pete would correct you because he's on Long Island.
Yes.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah. Yep. Seems to be driving him mad. Can he use his knowledge of crappy horror films to stay alive, or will he be just another victim in the dun Last Amityville? Love it. Awesome. What's the status, man? Like you're there, you got the right mindset, the right passion for films. You talk to folks who are passionate about filmmaking. They're encouraging you, patrons who are supporting you to help make this thing. Where are you at?
Where am I at? I'll tell you where I'm at. So the movie's done. It's shot. It's edited. We are having a premiere screening for cast, crew, friends, and family in Hollywood. And the film is officially picked up for distribution and will be distributed by SRS Cinema in North America. I don't know about overseas yet, but it will be in the US. So it will be available on DVD and Blu-ray sometime in the very near future. And then I believe that it will go to streaming at some point as well. I don't know the time frame of that yet. But Ron Bonk, who is the head of SRS, has all that information. And he has all my files, and the film is coming out. So the Last Amityville movie will be official, and everyone will be able to see it.
Congratulations on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have to imagine now, having created the Last Amityville movie, does it allow you to feel some more kinship with some of the directors and creators that you've had a chance to talk to that have made their own? Because now you're going to be part of the universe now.
There's that group picture like at the end of The Shining, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it feels cool. I'm crossing my fingers because last year, Fangoria magazine, which every year does the Chainsaw Awards, where they give awards to all the best horror movies of the year, they came up with a new category, which is Best Amityville Feature. And they announced that they will be doing it again this year. And I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping that we get included in there. I'd love to win it. But I would absolutely love to go to the Chainsaw Award ceremony and talk to some of the other Amityville directors and get their info, get their insight in them, because I definitely have met plenty of them already through the channel. I've met quite a few filmmakers and directors, and it's funny because I hit a point on the channel where I definitely started tailoring how I talk about the movies and the people behind the movies in a different way because of the response and the interaction. And I've realized that, I used to do a series called How Bad Could It Be, where I watched movies that were possibly really terrible, and I talked about whether or not they were bad or not. When I started getting a lot of response from the actual filmmakers themselves and interacting with the people, and I feel bad because I feel bad like taking a crap on somebody that really did do something with very little. And so I reserve my crap for the big budget stuff now that they had enough money to do better and they just didn't. So I know when I had a rather famous rivalry with Dustin Ferguson, who made like Camp Blood 4 and 5, and he made Amityville in the Hood, and he made Amityville Clown House, and he's made 5G zombies, like crazy low budget movies. And I used to tease him pretty strongly on the channel, but I actually realized that like I know that I make fun of his movies, but I keep on coming back and watching them over and over. And I finally he commented on one of the videos, and I just started emailing him back and forth. And like, he's a super nice guy, like really hustles to get these movies out there. And I feel bad. Like, I don't want to make fun. Like, I'll make fun of it. I've told him, I said, I'll make fun of the movies. I'll make fun of the movies. Like, I'll make fun of the content of the movies, but I don't like making fun of the people making the movies or even the actors. Like, sometimes I feel bad making fun of the actors, because I know most of the time they're not actors. They're just people like some like called over their neighbor, like, hey, you want to be in the movie? Well, sure, why not? You know, and they don't know what they don't know what they're doing. It's like, I'm not gonna like tease them mercilessly for being a terrible actor if they've never done it before. So like those guys, it's like it feels like punching down to sit there and say like, okay, well, I mean, you had like $3,000 and you made a feature film using masks from your garage, and like you did it, you pulled it together, to then tease them and be mean to them. That doesn't feel right to me.
One of the Amityville movies you brought up, where it's I want to say it's a kid. I mean, obviously he's not a kid, but it's an 18-year-old who directed the movie. And watching some of the clips that you used, it could be easy to, like you said, Josh, kind of like punch down. But on the contrary, there's an appreciation. And like you said, there has to be that appreciation that you have now, a kindred spirit, like someone who's made something, who's gone through those frustrations. And certainly now, you know, when you've gotten to a point where you're talking about distribution, you know, you're in that small group of folks that have been able to, you know, not only take their passion, but make something. And because of that, I know that's something that Pete and I always kind of talk about, like kind of like celebrating the fact that a film was made in general, especially when you get to understand a bit more about the making of these things, they seem like a miracle. That these many people were able to get together and make something sometimes cohesive. You know, it's like you're just like, wow, this is impressive, even if sometimes the final product isn't. But the work, the journey sometimes is really more outstanding than the destination. And that's okay. You can appreciate that for what it is.
Well, and then meanwhile, talk about that, the 18-year-old, that's Dylan Mars Greenberg, who made Amityville Vanishing Point.
My brothers and sisters and others. Margaret East passed away mysteriously. She'll be missed sorely.
You all killed Margaret!
Good evening, everybody. Special Agent Hank Denton. I'm here investigating the death of Margaret East. Now, where are those two girls?
I feel like my reality is stranger than my nightmares.
The world is just an illusion.
Well, you shouldn't be too quick to doubt yourself.
You can't come here in our house!
We gotta get the fuck out of here.
I think Margaret may still be alive, but her motives are unclear.
Let us bow our heads now and say prayers unto her soul, that she may be carried to the place which she deserves, and all those around her may deserve their fates as well.
It has me now. I'm sorry.
There's something very strange going on in Amityville.
And Dylan is one of the nicest people I talked to on all the directors. And Dylan was actually not very happy that I didn't trash the movie more. Because apparently when these movies obviously get talked up and like end up on these like worst of lists and people make fun of them mercilessly, then makes people want to watch them more and be like, oh yeah, we want to see it. So it was one of those things of like, oh man, I kind of wish you had trashed it more and like made fun of it and like said it was one of the worst movies you would ever seen in your entire life, because people say, oh god, I gotta check that movie out more. So I guess maybe I should have bagged on it more, but I actually I enjoy that movie for all its weird loopiness.
I'm waiting for the one day, Josh, where you release a video where you talk to like a 15-year-old that's made an Amityville movie on their cell phone. Because, I mean, come on, they have the technology in their pocket to make it. And we've seen some people make some pretty amazing stuff on their cell phone. And you're like, well, you know, before I can talk to you or interview, like, I am going to have to get your parents' permission before we can have this conversation. So you're going to get there at one point.
Oh, I know. Well, a portion of a solid portion of the last Amityville movie is shot on a cell phone. So there you go. We've reached the point where technology to make a movie is in everybody's hands. I just think it's more the motivation and the skill at this particular point that holds people back from doing it.
Remember, you can find the Fan2Fan Podcast at www.fanpodcast.com. Facebook, just search Fan2Fan Podcast. That's FAN, the number 2, FAN.
On Instagram at Fan2Fan Podcast.
Or on Twitter at Fan2Fan Podcast.
We'd love to hear from you, so send a message and let us know what you think of the show. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
That's not the end of our conversation with Josh Spiegel. He's going to come back and we're going to dig into Amityville 3D, the 3-dimensional installment in this crazy, creepy franchise. Josh covered them all on his YouTube channel at Movie Timelines. Make sure to check that out. He has over 50,000 subscribers, over 500 videos that cover different movie timelines from Friday the 13th, Leprechaun, John Carpenter movies, Jaws clones, and you also want to check out his 80s project where he is watching every 80s horror movie. Also, make sure to check out his book, Timelines of Terror, The Fractured Continuities of Horror Film Sequels, published by McFarlane Press. The book examines horror films, the sequels, franchises like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Child's Play, how those movies maintain continuity, canon, how they abandon it altogether. That's why we had a great conversation with Josh. The man is a fan of things that we are fans of, probably a fan of things that you are a fan of. And thank you for listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast.